So hi everyone, I'm a research fellow here at the ESSEC Business School, and I'm presenting you a paper we're working on with Pache, which is a professor here. The paper title is "What do we know about corporate philanthropy?" So it's a good thing that I pass just after you, because we're going to talk about the same subject. The idea for this paper is that we don't know much about this subject, and we need to know more, especially for our research, and Claire and I. So we attempted a broad-ranging literature review in management and management-related literature about this particular phenomenon. So my presentation will quickly, I hope, present the stakes, the objectives of this research, and also the method we used, with a real quick data overview. And then I'm going to present you the four basic themes that we found in the literature, which are framed in form of questions, broad questions. And then the interesting thing will also be to see what these points do not address. And this is the objective. The final objective is to identify gaps for our research and research for colleagues like you. I'm going to go quickly on that because for about 30 years, philanthropy has been growing, especially in corporations, but also as a broad-ranging phenomenon. For the number of foundations increased a lot. Individuals have been more generous in terms of the percentage of their income they allow to philanthropy. Yet it's still not very known in academia, and especially it's really focused in some academic disciplines like philosophy or history. We have a lot of historical data on early philanthropists, for instance. And we wanted to know more about philanthropy on a management perspective. Also, you see the literature is pretty scattered. You have economics, sociology, history, some law, political science, and all these literature do not really connect. So we wanted to have this connection. And as you will see, corporate philanthropy is just a separate stream of research of our whole literature review project. So today I'm going to talk to you about the corporate philanthropy literature. The objectives, well, it's pretty straightforward, because as it is a relatively young and interdisciplinary field, with a lot of uncertainty about the concepts and a lot of dispersion of knowledge. So we want to be able to bring that together. And the classical idea of a literature review is to delimitate the field boundaries, have the key concept, the key theories and authors that are in competition, and also try to separate different avenues for research and spot also some gaps. So we have basically the same definition as you guys have on philanthropy, except again that our project is about the broad definition of philanthropy. But today I'm going to focus on corporate philanthropy, which is corporate donations to cause that serve the public good. And we're going to focus also on contemporary practices and not so much on the whole historic data I talked to you about. Again, the method is pretty classic. We search for keywords, which are the ones that you have in the first step. Keywords in the titles, abstracts, and the keywords fields of academic journals and also academic books, not professional or management practical books. We had a very open data search, because we focused on management, but also we included articles in economics, sociology, and political science that had somehow a link, an interest in terms of management questions. And also we search for the most academic databases that you all know. And this first round yielded more than 250 entries. So then we did the whole process of refining the research, which is reading the abstract and seeing if there was nothing off topic, and then eliminating these items. And then we screen through all the references lists and try to identify relevant items that did not contain the keywords that I talked to you about. So reading these references, we found other entries, and then we repeated it again because we read the entries in the reference list of the new articles. So we were very tired in the end, and we found 348 entries. And as far as corporate philanthropy is concerned, it's about 40% of the total. Then we did the whole coding of this raw data. So we did a big coding scheme, a spreadsheet, and we tried to identify all these aspects. And the most interesting aspect here is the fact that we tried to identify the broad research theme that was researched by the authors and what were their main findings, which is I'm going to present to you now. Just a quick fact about the data so you can have a better idea. It's a fairly recent academic area of interest. We did not have limited date. We started, we also accepted very old articles. There's one article in 1895, one in 1922, but there were exceptions. And the trend, really starts in the 80s, and then you have a surge in the 90s and early 2005 was a good year for philanthropic research. And for corporate philanthropy, it's about the same trend. So as you see, we have identified different types of philanthropy, which is articles. Some articles really focus on the individuals. Some focus on foundations, private foundations. And also some are very specific about the different members of the same family that do philanthropy. But we focus today on corporate philanthropy. So again, this is why we did our coding scheme. We searched for the broad research questions, and with an iterative process, we identified four main pillars, four main questions, and these are the ones. So what is philanthropy? What are the factors, which is the before philanthropy? How is it organized in a corporation? And then what are the outcomes? What are the consequences of philanthropy? So the first question is the nature of philanthropy. How is it defined in the literature? We have very little debate about the very easy definition that we both used. It's very straightforward, but you have some scholars who frame corporate philanthropy differently. Some of them frame it as the way that executives have an enlightened self-interest, and so that corporate philanthropy benefits the company in the long run. Others frame it as a part of a CSR strategy, a bit like you guys did, which is a way to do a corporate social responsibility. Another stream of research say that it's a bit critical. They say it's a limited form of engagement, and it's, as you said, Rodolphe, it's maybe more limited than social business or more active or more collaborative engagement with the non-profit organizations, for instance. And then there's also a branch of marketing literature that is interested into the differences between corporate philanthropy and cause-related marketing, such as selling products, and a small percentage of the product goes back to NGO or non-profit. So the second and most interesting, I would say, most debated and documented question is the factors. What influences corporate philanthropy? So it's about half of all the articles and book chapters were identified. We identified three substreams. The first one is factors that we call internal factors, firm-level factors, which is what is the effect of the size of the corporation, its income, the structure of its ownership. Another branch is more external factors, which are related to the firm's industry. Is it a polluting industry? Does it have any consequences on the level of corporate philanthropy? Is it also, does the broader environment influence the corporate philanthropy, for instance, tax rates? And then we have a substream for the motivations of the executives. We talked about Bill Gates, executives doing corporate philanthropy. Just a bit of detail about these three streams, because I think it's the most interesting. I don't have time to go in much detail, but you see that the three most researched, I would say, determinants of philanthropy regarding the firm characteristics are the size of the firm, which is the number of employees, and also the size of the board, for instance. Profitability is pretty obvious, and the ownership structure is interesting because some studies say that when you have a scattered ownership, you have less control over the management initiative to do more corporate philanthropy. You don't have this, you have this agency problem again. And these are the three, all of them do not, all these studies do not go in the same direction exactly. Some find a moderate correlation between firm size and corporate philanthropy levels, but overall they say that when you have a large firm, basically you give large amounts of philanthropy, which is pretty evident. But I don't have much time to go in detail, but we found broadly that firm size, profitability, and a unique shareholder or few shareholders structure are correlated by high level of corporate philanthropy. As for the field, the first item is interesting because we see that in industries such as tobacco or polluting industries, usually companies tend to have a higher level of corporate philanthropy expenses. And also, when you have, for example, in B2B industries, you don't have so much corporate philanthropy as in B2C because the consumers are targeted by the corporate philanthropy practices. So when you have high public visibility and a consumer-oriented business model, you're more inclined to do corporate philanthropy. And also about the tax rates, this has not been researched so much for corporations, but it's a major issue for individual philanthropy. And usually people say that lower tax rates. Well, there's a disagreement between economists that work on this. Some say that lower tax rates incite people to give more, but others say that when you have high taxes and generous deduction system, you give more. So not everyone is on the same page here. And also some research about the effect of business cycles on the level of corporate philanthropy. Interesting, the motivations. Again, here we find the classical agency problem between the owners of a firm and the management applied to corporate philanthropy, which is management executives have an incentive to shirk their responsibilities to maximize the profit, and they can use some part of the profit to finance things that they like, for instance, fine arts or opera. We also find some studies that say that they try to impulse programs that fit their personal values, whether religious or more universal. And interestingly, you also have the effect of networks between CEOs and executives and non-profit leaders in the same areas. You see that when they have connections and when they are members of non-profit organizations in the area, they tend to push for more corporate philanthropy. And also another strand of this substream is the thing that agency problem is put aside, and it's argued that it's in the firm's best interest to do corporate philanthropy, really, because it enhances its image, it's good for public relations, and also it motivates the executives to gain political support, for instance. We have interesting research in China and in, I think it's in Central America too, where corporations do corporate philanthropy to get better support or from the government. And also some research, which is it's a slight proportion, but say that there's a genuine desire to be a good citizen for these executives that do corporate philanthropy. As I have 5 minutes left, I think I'm going to skip through the other results, but just you have an idea of the paper we want to finish. So how is the corporate philanthropy organized? A lot of the interesting papers we found say that first in the 70s or 80s, it was a very peripheral activity in large corporations. It was not very focused, and there was no link with the business, the core business of the corporations. And today, it's been included way more in the core business and also attached to CSR policies. It's more professionalized. Now you have some people who are in charge of corporate philanthropy at higher levels of the hierarchy. It's not only the CEO that takes the decision, or his wife, or like it was the cliche in the 1980s. And also the practices evolve. You have also influences from other practices outside of the corporations, such as venture philanthropy, from a venture capital industry. So all these questions of organization represent about a third of the papers we identified deal with these issues. So these were the details. Again, I will be pleased to share with you the literature, because I think we have some papers in common. I will just go to the outcomes, which is the last of my 4 pillars. The outcomes are related to what motivates for the executives to do philanthropy, but we see these are really empirical findings that link the fact that a corporation has a corporate philanthropy policy, and there were a lot of quantitative measures of increased consumer loyalty, and also people who were not really concerned about this particular company. Once they knew they had a very interesting program for building the community around the company factory, they were much sensitive, and some of them bought the products, whereas they didn't do that in the first place. You also saw increased employee moral involvement. There were measures of that too, which is also subject to a lot of methodological questions, but still it's a big part of the research. And also media attention is higher, and usually you find better papers in the press about these companies. But, well, this is the following. The big question on the whole CSR literature is usually, does CSR have an impact on financial performance? This is the most researched question. So in the particular case of corporate philanthropy, you also have this question, and it's maybe harder to measure, but some have measured a moderate positive outcome on firm profitability when they started a corporate philanthropy practice. And but it's not the case all the time. Some studies found absolutely no correlation between the levels. And also some say that it's a inverted U-shaped curve. So when you start there's a limit, you can't give 50% of your income, because in the end the profitability goes down. Some backfire effects are also noted in the literature, and also you have a branch of literature that's very critical of the corporate philanthropy agenda. Just to finish, this is where we want to go. These are 4 areas that we identified that were not really present in the literature that we reviewed. We would like to go more in depth about the process, because the literature is pretty superficial about the way what is a corporate philanthropy department? How do the people work? How do they? When do they meet the non-profit or community officials? Which is still a bit of a black box. And also, we would be very interested to document the institutionalization of corporate philanthropy. For instance, the emergence of new professions. These people who are in charge of corporate foundations or in charge of the CSR business. We would like to, there's not so much literature on that. And also, we would be very interested to identify the actual impact. How do we measure the impact of a corporate philanthropy program, which is, again, it's a separate literature on impact measurement, for instance. And we would like to bring together these 2 literature. And also, I forgot to tell you that most of the articles and books we found were American or written in the UK. That's my, it's very nice. So we would like to have more non-American studies. I have nothing against my American friends, but we would like to have more European, Asian, or South American, for instance, studies. So this is, our objective is to dig at least the European aspect of it. Thanks. I think I'm done now, and I will have some questions if you want. Thank you.